All right, students, welcome back. Welcome back from last week. If you haven't been with us before, welcome to the live stream. Today's just going to be a question and answer day. So if you guys are ready to go here, can everybody just give me a hello, a thumbs up in the chat, whatever it takes, and then we will get started. If you don't want to be participating in the chat directly, then can you just give me a thumbs up below the video to let us know who's here? And yeah, guys, and then we'll get started. Today, guys, just for the record, today we're going to be talking, it's just a general Q&A about the college process, about the SAT, about the ACT. It looks like a lot of questions have already been posted in the chat, so we'll get to those here in just a second. If you have any questions, go ahead and post those in the chat. We'll be happy to answer those, or I'll be happy to answer those. And yeah, and we're going to try to do these again for 30 minutes every Friday. After this week, in 2 weeks, we're going to be doing another live stream just like this one. But we are going to make it a membership-only Q&A. So again, we're going to continue to put out the videos that we've always put out, like the real-time videos, right? Those will always be free. But we wanted to do something where, where we could continue to offer something for our membership program. And we thought that this would be a great one. So hopefully you guys get a good experience with this last week and then this week again. Hopefully we're able to answer those questions that you have. And then, hopefully you guys become members. If you want to click the membership button, you just have to click the join button below, and I can post that in the chat as well. So join the membership. It's just the silver membership, which is $3 a month. And I realize that if you do have the means, it will help not only you, but all students. So if nothing else, guys, please also subscribe to the channel. Here's join. Okay, so I just posted that in the chat. I'll leave that up there. All right, again, and then in the meantime, we're just going to go through as many questions as we can in this 30-minute period. If you guys are interested in joining the chat, joining the membership, then you guys will have this every single Friday for ongoing. We'll start this again in 2 weeks just to let everybody get a chance to join the membership program, and then we'll keep moving. Is that cool? Can everybody, again, give me a thumbs up in the chat or just a hello if you're here and participating and you have questions about the SAT, about the ACT, or about college planning in general, and then we'll get going. Looks like we had a couple questions already here. Let's see. Good question. So Shreyas, welcome back, by the way. I know you were here last week. Very, very good question regarding the December scores. A question here was, the specific question was, if I'm applying regular decision, can I send my December SAT scores? So the short answer is yes, you can. You can absolutely send those. The longer answer is that there's a little risk in that. Now, the December SAT scores should be back to you by mid-December, so then, of course, then there's no risk. But if for whatever reason those December test scores are delayed in any way, right, and they don't get them back to you in kind of that typical now 10 to 14-day period, then you're kind of taking a big risk. Because if you submit your regular decision application on January 1st or December 31st, whatever it is, there's a chance that you haven't seen your SAT scores yet if they're delayed a bit. Again, that's rare. I think that you're fine taking the December test, but you're pushing it up a little bit close to the deadline, so just kind of keep that in mind. Does that make sense? Yep, every college has a regular decision. Now, some colleges have kind of combined their regular decision and early decision. So some colleges now only have one decision period. There's not an early, there's not a regular, but all colleges have some standard. We'll call it a standard decision time where everything has to be submitted. So that's actually a good question because that's something that's been changing in the college process recently. Great question. Man, just a lot. Shreyas, a lot of great questions today. This next one was applying in regular decision for regular decision. Should I submit test optional SAT colleges in early action without submitting my SAT scores. So again, the short answer to that one, because that one's like a very kind of, that's a very long answer for that one, just because I have no idea what the extracurriculars look like. I would say mostly I would say that it depends on your extracurricular activities and your GPA, your school grades. Again, the question was, should I submit test optional for early decision if I don't want to submit my SAT score yet? Should I submit for early action schools without using a test score for test optional schools? Again, I think that largely depends on how well you've done in school and how well you've done on extracurriculars. So that one's a little bit harder to answer in a short period of time, just because it would take a lot of review of other aspects of your application to help. Does that make sense? Thumbs up if that makes sense. Yeah, Shreyas, and by the way, thank you for asking so many questions. It absolutely will benefit other students. So yes, absolutely, great job asking those. Tips to complete the test in time. Honestly, this is the weirdest thing, and we recommend it to every student. But the key to finishing the SAT or the ACT in time is to take it untimed. Very reverse psychology there, right? And again, as you log on, if you have any questions, just post those in the chat. Happy to answer any of those questions related to college app process, right, or any SAT, ACT scores. Regarding the timing, I would absolutely take a test untimed. One of the problems that we see with students all the time as they start preparing for the SAT and the ACT is that they just start by jumping into it, right? They start by taking it timed. Look, by and large, you really haven't taken very many timed tests in your life. Actually timed, like start today, start right now, and then stop right now. That hasn't existed often. Now, some of you may have taken those a little bit, right? If you've taken a practice AP or if you've taken an AP test, then yes. But still, even at that level, it's minimal compared to the number of tests you've taken overall in your life. And so the key is that you're not used to that start and stop. And that if you just jump into that, it makes it feel very, very overwhelming because you don't get a chance to really think, right? You don't get a chance to think. You're just jumping into it, and it's just kind of like eyes wide open, what's going on? And if you don't immediately get your score, then all of a sudden there's something wrong. So again, for anybody that's struggling with time, especially on the ACT, because that's obviously a little bit more time sensitive, but on the SAT as well, try taking a test untimed to see how you do. See what your score would be if you had all the time in the world. Okay? That's a very, very, it's like very reverse psychology, counterintuitive, but it will help you immensely, I promise. Thumbs up. Does that make sense, Shreyas? Restrictive early action. So good question. We had a question about restrictive early action versus regular early action. It's kind of like restrictive early action is in the sense of like, is it better or is it worse? It's like a hybrid for early decision in the sense that generally speaking, early decision, right, which is kind of like the most extreme. Does that make sense? Most extreme version where if you submit and they accept you, you have to go, or you owe a bunch of money. I think you owe like, the first half of the tuition maybe. You're like committing to early decision. Now, the best part about early decision is that it is that the number of students that apply early decision and get in is significantly higher than the regular admissions. So, like if you apply early decision, there might be a 30% acceptance rate for early decision students because you have to go, and 10 or 8% acceptance rate at elite colleges because you don't have to go, right? So restrictive early action is just kind of in the middle. So I would say like as you go into those tiers, early decision, restrictive early action to early action, and then to regular decision, right? Those four kind of are on a tiered process in terms of there's a lot more restrictions in terms of whether or not you have to go to those schools. But at the same time, there's also a higher chance of getting into those schools. So if you have a favorite school, I would highly recommend applying early because the numbers are just suggest that it's much better. Okay, how many times should I take the SAT? We recommend 3 times officially. Now that doesn't mean that you have to take it 3 times, obviously with practice testing. We've had students take it less than 3 times. Sometimes you just knock it out on your first one and you're done. We've had students take it way more than 3 times, but our recommendation is 3. It just seems like a logical number. And typically, test number 2 is the one that that students do the best on. Just in our experience, we keep track of numbers pretty consistently, and I'd say test number 2 is typically the one. 1450 is an absolutely great score. Yep, 1450 on the SAT is a phenomenal score. Absolutely, top. I think it's in the top. Let's see, 13, top 3%, top 3.5% for 1450. So phenomenal job on that. Huge. The question about school ranking, huge. If you're in the top 2% of 500 students, that's huge. That's a big, big deal. 11 out of 500 colleges will absolutely take that into consideration. And it means that you did really well in school. And if you're looking at any elite college, that's what they'll expect. They'll expect everything. I mean, these top colleges and universities now will just expect that you are great at everything. So being top 2% in your class is huge for your college application. We want to, of course, in those elite colleges, we want to continue to put other things together as well, but that's a phenomenal start. So great job on that. Yeah, so it's practice tests on paper versus practice tests on screen, absolutely. If you are an international student and you're taking the computer-based test, I would highly recommend taking a digital copy. For international students, there are so many more paper copies available, like PDFs, right? Not the computer-based testing, copy that you guys would see on the test. But if you can even just put it up on a screen, and you obviously, that's even harder than the computer-based test because you can't underline as much, right? But if you have it on a screen, even the process of being able to, process things off of a computer screen is huge. So it actually makes it harder if you're taking a digital PDF file and just taking it off of a computer screen. So it'll make it easier when you get into the computer-based test. For people that are taking it on paper, it's absolutely highly recommended that you do not take it on a computer, that you take it on paper, because that gives you a big advantage when you get to the real test because it looks just like what you've been practicing. Yeah, so any class rank that's really high is always going to matter. I would say yes, just broadly, any class rank, if you do well in school, you're going to do, that's a huge plus, right? That's a huge plus. In terms of no schools, in terms of not having any Ivy League students that get in, it just depends. There are so many students that apply to every college now that I wouldn't worry about that too much. I would just put your best foot forward. That's all you can do, and roll the dice and see what happens. But I don't think that that's going to be a problem in the process. So here's what I'll say about test optional, and I wish colleges did a better job of explaining this. Okay, so let me just, for everybody out there watching that's going to watch this, that's watching this right now, test optional has unfortunately become it's become a very easy way out for colleges, okay? And let me just be very, very blunt about that. Colleges released their stats this year, and we can, let me just write this down so you guys have this on the screen. Colleges just released their stats, and even some elite colleges there are some elite colleges like the University of Chicago that has been test optional for far longer than the pandemic. But let me just make sure that you guys know this, because it's really important, and I wish, again, colleges did a better job of this, because they don't. Now, of course, might have to go find my writing pencil. Well, I'll just say it to you guys then. Of the elite colleges in the pandemic year, right, this last year where it was like super restrictive in terms of who could take the test, Georgetown, which is a top 10, 15, 20 school in the world, came out and said that they had 90%, 90% of their admitted students in this class did submit a test score. They did submit one. University of Chicago has been test optional for about the last 10 years, and their stats are almost identical to what Georgetown came out with. This is the first year Georgetown's been test optional. Chicago's done it for about 10 years, and they have had the same stats over that, roughly the same stats over that 10-year period. So again, this is a very, very easy way out for colleges, unfortunately, and they have no incentive to tell you what's really happening. What's really happening is that students they're getting so significantly more applications because of test optional, right? They get, say Georgetown gets 30,000 applications one year, and then they go test optional, they get 60,000 the next year. But they're only accepting the same amount, and as their own stats came out and said, 90% of those students are still submitting a test score. So basically, they double the number of their applicants. They still submit the same number, and 90% of that number is still submitting a test score. So in reality, their stats go way up. It looks like so many fewer students are getting admitted, making it more elite, right? It looks like, oh, we had so many students admitted, and we only, applied, and we only admitted this many, which is the same number we've always admitted. But because we had such a high number of students apply because of test optional, even though we knew that a lot of those students weren't going to get in because 90% of our students did still submit a test score, it's a very, very, bad side of this college application process. But realistically, that's what's going on. And you don't have to even look further than the fact that all of those numbers exist publicly. That's not me just making that up. If you just quickly go Google, Georgetown's acceptance rate for 2021 rather, you'll see that the acceptance rate went way down, and yet they came out with their own published work that said 90% of the students still submitted a test score. So I just want everybody to know that, so that, not to say that it's bad to not submit a test score, but if you're not going to submit a test score, know that the 10% of students that didn't submit one were probably very, very elite in their schoolwork, in their extracurriculars, and so you just have to take that into consideration. I also want you guys to know that because we have a lot of students lately that are like, well, my school is test optional, so it won't matter. 90% of admitted students, and we just read the stat that 98% of scholarship opportunities still require a test score. So scholarship opportunities haven't gone test optional at all. And so that should give you kind of all the knowledge you need to know about what test optional really is. And it's just a way to say, like, oh, we're test optional, we believe in test optional, but like realistically on the back end with the admissions department, they are suggesting that they're just slightly believing in that. So again, I that's not to say to watch more of our videos or anything like that. I just want you guys to have as much knowledge as possible. And can everybody give me a thumbs up if that makes sense? Because I know I didn't write that on the board. Can everybody give me a thumbs up if that makes sense? Because it's a very, very, again, kind of shady practice, I think. And it's one that everybody should know about, so that you guys don't think, oh, I'll just submit test optional, I'll be fine. It's heavily skewed towards people that do take a test, at least at the elite colleges. I'm not sure at others, but at the top 25 schools, you can be sure that the majority of students, the vast majority, high majority, 90%, are submitting a test score for college admittance. Okay. Yeah, so guys, so here's what I would do on the scholarship opportunity. It's a great question. So anything related to scholarships, I would be very, very aware of what scholarship opportunities exist. So one of the things that we've seen from students very, frequently is that we've seen this, that students aren't even aware necessarily of how many scholarships are out there. So of course, scholarship opportunities are going to be very similar to admissions process, right? It's just like doing a second admissions process. That's really what a scholarship opportunity is. The key with scholarships is to know how many are out there, because what we have seen is that there are so many scholarships available to students, and there's so much money allocated. There's so much money allocated to scholarships that people don't even know about. So the one thing that I would do with scholarship opportunities is I would Google every scholarship you can, and I think there's websites. I know there's websites that actually give students the ability to do this, where you can actually log into the website and just search scholarships, and you can plug in keywords. Like there's a crazy number of scholarship opportunities. I actually have a cousin who earned a scholarship that they have sort of grocery store, right, where you go buy your groceries. There's a grocery store union for everybody that works at a grocery store. There's a union that actually provides a scholarship to students that are kids that are sons and daughters of employees at a grocery store. I didn't know that, but that's a perfect example of one where like that would never be the first thing. Everybody's thinking the Rhodes Scholarship, right? Like the biggest scholarships in the world, or the presidential scholarship at a college. There are so many scholarships available. So the first thing that I would do is I would find a website or find a resource, and there are a bunch of them for free right now that you just search like "Find My Scholarship" or something on Google, and I promise you will be amazed at how many scholarship opportunities there are. So the admissions process for scholarship is just very similar to what an admissions process would be for a college. But the point is that there are so many scholarships that go unallocated solely because students don't know about them. So that would be my best advice on that. Yeah. In terms of the volunteering videos, I know that a number of colleges have done like some creative applications. I don't think it's been a part of the Common App. I don't think it's a specific component of the Common Application yet. But there are places where you can attach documents and files on the Common Application. I know that. And I know that the Common Application has opened it up to a link. I can't remember the site, but don't worry about that. In terms of posting your videos, with what the Common App or colleges want to see, it will all be there when you start the Common Application. Okay, and if it's not, what I would recommend doing is writing a note within the Common Application. There's like a notes space. I would write a note there, and I would just let them know that your videos are posted on YouTube under this link, and then just post the link and create a YouTube channel and create a playlist with all of your videos. That would be my recommendation in terms of if you don't see a spot. I'm pretty sure there is one now on the college app. I know that they were really, really pushing for more videos and creativity on applications. So I think there is one, but if you don't, just create a YouTube channel, create a playlist with all of your videos, and then just post that link in the notes section of the Common App. It says like anything else you want us to know, just post that link. Does that make sense? Great questions today, everybody. Great questions. And I really appreciate it because like last week last week's video had 500 or 600 views within the week span, and I think there was only 5 or 6 of us, kind of like today, 5 or 6 of us on for the live stream. So everybody else doesn't necessarily get a chance to answer or to ask their questions because of timing, because they're just not around for these videos. And so when you guys ask these questions, I'm positive that other students have the same questions. So I really appreciate, for those that are able to attend live, I really appreciate you guys asking these. Okay. Any other questions? Again, like I said before, we're going to try to limit these live streams to about 30 minutes or so. I don't want to make them too much longer because the point of this is not to the point of this is to keep it short and sweet so that you get your questions answered each week, but that it's not too overwhelming in terms of the amount of time that you have to dedicate towards it. So any other questions? We'll sign off here in about 5 minutes or so. But in the meantime, any other questions that you have? Any other questions? General. Also, is anybody taking the ACT tomorrow? For anybody that is, good luck. Yeah, so in terms of the curve, don't worry too much about it. The curve, everybody, is preset. I don't know if anybody knew that before, but the ACT has so much data on students now. They've had so many students through the years take these tests that the curve is preset. They already know what the curve is before you actually take the test. So don't go into any ACT or SAT exam thinking that there's going to be a difference in the curve, because there's not. It's not about demographics, even how many students take it. They've already preset it. If there is a very big issue with the curve that they set, and it almost never happens because they have so much data that they almost know. That's why the experimental section at the end of the test. The reason they're having you do those problems at the end, for anybody that's done the experimental section, which is just at the end, they ask you to do like an extra section, and they say it doesn't count. What it's for is to create new practice problems and to set the curve to see how difficult those problems are, for students in the future. So when they create future test forms, they're using those experimental questions. Now, again, if something is way off, like for whatever reason they do, their curve is completely off, they do what's called curve shaving. So if, like, for whatever reason the distributions that they're expecting don't actually happen, it happens like on one test per year. So it's very rare. They are very good at this with the experimental section. They analyze so much data at the ACT and the College Board for the SAT tests. If there's something that's so off, they do what's called curve shaving, which they will move the curve slightly. But just going forward, guys, if anybody ever has any questions about the curve and what it's going to be for one test versus another, and if anybody says anything other than there's no reason to think about that because it's already existed, then you should know that. In fact, sometimes they'll use tests that have already been used in the past that were not released, so nobody has access to those tests, but they were maybe taken in 2016 or 2017 in September, for example, where you couldn't see it. And then they'll use them again 5 years later because it was never released, nobody knows about it, and everybody that took it in 2016 or 17 has already graduated. So there's no incentive for them to, remember things for 4 years and then share answers. They do not grade the experimental section. Good question. So in regards to the experimental section, they don't grade it, but the reason they act like it's important is because they wanted students to take it seriously so that they have more data for future students on future test forms. Does that make sense? So again, it's not about they're not grading the experimental section, but they want you to take it seriously so that they have more access, so they can include those questions on future test forms if they think it's a good representation of what they're looking for. Does that make sense? Guys, in terms of the international CBT, just because we are running out of time and I'm trying to keep these short, but here's some tips if you guys are interested. We actually made this reading video for the computer-based test, and then I'll get to the question about why choose Yale as an example. ACT CBT breakdown. If you haven't seen this video, I would highly recommend watching it. Yeah, again, Calvin, sorry to make you worried there. They do not grade the experimental section, so yeah. Why choose Yale? I'll end it. And by the way, if anybody has any questions following these, we're trying to keep these to 30 minutes, and so it's every week. If anybody has any questions following these live streams, just post them below these videos. If you post them in the comments section, one of our teachers or tutors will definitely reply. So just make sure that you post those if we run out of time and can't get to everybody's questions. So yeah, regarding the Yale question, why choose Yale? The big thing is to try to be specific as to why you want to go to Yale. So one of the things that we've seen a lot from students, right? A lot of things that we've seen from students is you want to go to Yale just because it's Yale, right? I mean, realistically, that's what 90% of students will submit for that question. And if that's you, if you are a person that's just like, I just want to go to Yale because I know it's Yale, or I know it's an Ivy League school, and that's, you have to come up with something a little bit deeper. I don't think you'll get penalized because there are so many students that come up with a very generic answer like, oh, I went to New Haven and I love Connecticut. I love Boston and that's why I want to go to Harvard. Right? Everybody's going to come up with that excuse, so I don't think you're going to be penalized if you submit a response like that. But what I think is going to happen is that it's not going to set you apart. My recommendation on that front is to come up with a way that makes you very specific to Yale. So maybe it's a program specifically, and you can't really fake that. But believe me, the admissions directors at these schools have seen so many applications over the years that you can't fake, the idea that like, oh, I want to go work with this professor if you've never shown any interest before that. Like they'll go back if you're interested in working with a professor to see if you did the Yale summer program. Now, I know not everybody has the means to do that, and if you don't have the means to travel across the world to go to Yale's summer program, then just write that in the application and say, look, I couldn't travel, but I've studied this and this and this, and I know everything about this professor and this department, and that's why I want to go to Yale. And if you do that, that's way more specific than the generic, Oh, I love to be in Connecticut, right? Or I love Yale because it's so good. It's such a great school, right? We want to try to avoid that. Does that make sense? 15, does that make sense? And that goes for everybody. I mean, anytime you're applying to an elite college, these people have seen, these admissions directors have seen so many applications over the years that you're not going to sneak one by them with some very generic response. They've read so many essays, so many applications, that your goal needs to set yourself apart in a very specific manner. Okay, and that goes for your Common App essay or your supplemental essays as well. It's got to be very specific to you, and my recommendation is not to lie. Think about something in your life, right? Don't lie. Don't exaggerate something, right? Just because you don't feel like your story is not as interesting as maybe somebody else's is. Don't exaggerate that. Figure out something in your life that was meaningful, that changed you, and then write an essay about that. That has been very successful for a lot of our students. We have students at numerous Ivy League schools. That's not because I'm a great teacher. It's because we've seen enough students over the years and we've tracked enough data. We've been very, very diligent about tracking data to make these recommendations based on mathematics. I mean, if anybody's watched our ACT and SAT videos, you guys will know that I never comment about strategies. We have our opinions on what strategy works best. But in terms of what I'm telling you is the finite, like the ACT curve, right? Or how the grading on the ACT works, or the SAT. Okay? Yeah, it's finite, right? That is not me making that up or me just guessing. These students that we've had that are at MIT or the Ivy League schools, or we have a few at Stanford right now, all of those students have been very, very specific in what they want to do. We have a student at Brown right now who wrote a very, very detailed essay about robotics. And he didn't even know if he was going to do the open education program at Brown, but he didn't even know if he wanted to go to Brown, or he didn't even know if he wanted to study robotics, but he submitted his responses as if he might be interested in robotics, and he had done so many robotics clubs and built so many things and had won competitions that the data there backed him up. And for Brown, he had middle of the road scores, if not lower of the middle 50%. So he was qualified from an academic perspective, but not overly qualified. He was certainly not at the top of the class. He was a good student. He was a really good student, but not an exceptional student. But because he was an exceptional robotics, he knew everything there was to know about math and how robotics worked and mechanics, that of course Brown was very interested in what he could provide to the school in that capacity, and that's what they're looking for. All right, so guys, again, in terms of all your questions, I know there's always going to be more, but if you have any further questions, can everybody just make sure that you post those in the comments section below? I'm going to sign off just because I do want to continue to keep these right around 30 minutes so that it doesn't get too daunting with too many questions for students that watch this after, or even for you. Can everybody give me a thumbs up if they felt like this was helpful? Hopefully it was. And again, if you have any questions that you want to submit after, our teachers and tutors will 100% answer those. As long as you post them in the comment section of any video, we'll see those come through, and we'll make sure that we answer those. Okay, does that make sense? And again, like I said, if you guys are interested in signing up, in 2 weeks, this is going to be a membership for the Silver membership program. It's only $3 a month. I know that still is sometimes a lot, but I really believe that these Q&As, like if you're buying a book, if you're purchasing something at all related to the college application process or SAT, ACT, I really think our YouTube channel is better than any resource you'll find. Not necessarily every resource. Some of them are really good out there, but most, right? So if you're buying a book from Kaplan, that's $30. That's 10 months of this program, of this $3 a month membership. So I would recommend signing up for this if you're paying for something else. If you're paying for something else like a book or something along those lines, I would highly recommend becoming a member for $3 a month, because I think it's very worth it, and you get a lot of exclusive membership content videos. And we're going to continue to create more, not just this Q&A idea, but more beyond this. So, again, I hope everybody had a great, had a good experience. If you have any questions, like I said, post them below. If you're watching a recorded video of this, make sure that you post your comments below, or questions if you didn't get a chance to be on the live stream today. Otherwise, make sure you help us spread the word about the Star Tutors YouTube channel. Subscribe, if nothing else. That's free, 100% free all the time. And make sure you become a member if you can do so. All right, guys, it'll help us tremendously in terms of not only making more of these videos, but making free videos as well. Thanks, guys. Thanks so much. Have a great rest of your Friday, wherever you are in the world. Have a great weekend. And for anybody taking the ACT tomorrow, good luck.